I'm Father Alexander. This is St. Peter's Hove. Welcome to our 158th step in our walking tour through the Bible. And tonight I want to look at Psalm 51, brackets 52. Now, you may not know this, and it's only of historical interest, but until 1970, it was customary, or somewhat before 1970, it was customary for priests and monks and so on to recite all 150 psalms every week. In other words, there was a 1 week cycle. So every psalm got recited every week. Then, with the reforms of the liturgy, the 1 week cycle was transformed into a 4 week cycle. Certain psalms got recited more than others, but every psalm got recited at least once a month, except certain psalms were cut out. They didn't feature in the breviary, this little book here that I've got. They were left out of the divine office. Which psalms were these? Oh, incidentally, not just complete psalms were left out, but also certain bits of certain psalms. These were generally the bloodthirsty and violent bits, and the psalms that were essentially curses, deprecations. You can find them in the Bible, but they're not really used in church. And a lot of people have felt that this is a rather bad thing, that you can't really cherry pick the psalms. My point of view is actually, from a point of view of literature, why not cherry pick? After all, we don't love the book of Deuteronomy as much as we love the prophet Isaiah. We spend much more time reading and talking about the prophet Isaiah than we ever do about Deuteronomy. It's natural that certain things should resonate with us more than others. Okay, with that background, let's listen to Psalm 51, which is essentially a curse, a deprecation. Why do you boast of your wickedness, you champion of evil, planning ruin all the day long, your tongue like a sharpened razor, you master of deceit? You love evil more than good, lies more than truth. You love the destructive word, you tongue of deceit. For this God will destroy you and remove you forever. He will snatch you from your tent and uproot you from the land of the living. The just shall see and fear. They shall laugh and say, so this is the man who refused to take God as his stronghold, but trusted in the greatness of his wealth and grew powerful by his crimes. But I am like a growing olive tree in the house of the God. I trust in the goodness of God forever and ever. I will thank you forevermore, for this is your doing. I will proclaim that your name is good in the presence of your friends. Okay, well, we have a very strong contrast here between the psalmist, who is like a growing olive tree in the house of God, so he's a good guy, and the psalmist's enemy, or the person of whom the psalmist disapproves, who is a champion of evil, a master of deceit, a man with a very sharp tongue of deceit. Well, what's he actually accusing this guy of is not quite clear. He's saying he's nasty and he's deceitful and he loves evil more than good. Yes, it's not so particularly specific. The evil character is seen in deceit. Now, we know that Satan is the master of lies. That's what our blessed Lord calls him. And similarly, the psalmist singles out this feature of evil and depraved people. They are deceitful, they are liars. This is extremely important for us to grasp. They have a complicated relationship with the truth, to put it mildly. Therefore, if you think back of the most evil people in history, people like Dr. Joseph Goebbels, they were practiced liars, accomplished peddlers of false information and deceit. They were propagandists for evil, and they spoke about things as if they were true when they bore no relationship with the truth. Now, this is still going on. So this psalm is actually quite up to date. It's essentially telling us that the evil person is a liar. The evil person is the one who inverts the truth, who presents falsehood as truth. Now, I think you can work out whom I'm thinking of there. This idea, for example, that the Ukrainians have bombed themselves, or the Ukrainians are the aggressors in this war with Russia, is simply a travesty. It's turning the truth on its head. It wasn't the Ukrainians who attacked the Russians, it was the other way around. The Russian campaign to denazify Ukraine is, well, it's just a lie, isn't it? The Ukrainians are not the Nazis in this one. Ukraine is a democracy. Ukraine has a Jewish president. For goodness sake, the lie is outrageous. And somehow or another, the more outrageous a lie is, the more people seem to get away from it. And then, of course, what the psalmist points out is not just that evil people lie, but evil people will get their comeuppance. Now, we don't often hear this from the church, do we? In sermons nowadays, saying, "You evil people, hell is waiting for you." In fact, the psalmist doesn't say hell is waiting for you. The psalmist doesn't mention hell at all. He actually mentions punishment here and now on this earth. The Lord will remove you from ever. He will destroy you. He will snatch you from your tent and uproot you from the land of the living. You'll be wiped out. You'll be snatched from the land of the living. Something awful will happen to you. Now, it's important to realize that sin brings punishment in its wake. Sin damages everybody. It damages the person, the people around the sinner. But sin naturally, a natural result of sin is punishment. Sinners bring punishment on themselves. It's very important that this should be stressed. If you commit sin, it's not without its risks. The other thing is this. I remember once a lady of a certain age said to me, "Oh, when we were young at school, all the priest ever preached about at Mass was the dangers of going to hell." And I said, "Yes, because, hell's not the sort of place where anybody wants to end up in." She said, "Yes," she said, "but that's all he ever talked about." And I said, "Yes, I can understand that, there are other subjects. But," I said, "hasn't it all gone too far nowadays? The priest never mentions hell. It never happens. I mean, a lot of people nowadays are in hell, a hell created by them, for them by other people, and there are people who die and will end up, I think, probably, we can't be sure, but there's a good chance they may well end up in eternal damnation. We've got to be honest and say that, if you do dedicate your career to sin, then you will get what you wish for. You will end up damned. The best definition of hell I've ever come across is from Dorothy L. Sayers, and she gives this definition in her introduction to Dante's Inferno, when she talks about Paolo and Francesca, these two lovers who are being whirled around the world. And she said, hell is having your own way forever. In other words, if you're selfish, eventually you will end up in hell. You will create hell for yourself, and God will give you what you want. That's not good. The other thing that's clear in this psalm is the psalmist, who is a virtuous man, is, I won't say entertained by the prospect of the wicked man going to hell or being punished, but rather he's vindicated by his goodness, is reinforced and vindicated by the punishment that is coming for the wicked. In other words, the punishment coming for the wicked is a sign to him of God's justice. And the fact that he lives a good life is also a sign of God's justice. And therefore, the punishment of the wicked is something in which he takes satisfaction, because it shows us that the truth about wicked actions. That's worth bearing in mind. We shouldn't feel, I was going to say sorry for people who go to hell, but we shouldn't question God's judgment if people do go to hell. I stress that we don't know who does go to hell, if anybody goes to hell, but I wouldn't take this view, that this rather sanguine view that hell is empty. If somebody does go to hell, if somebody is consigned to hell forever, then, and hell is always forever, then that is God's justice and we should accept it. and God's justice should be the object of our contemplation and should give us a sense of satisfaction. Indeed, the punishment of sinners is a natural thing and it's a good thing. We shouldn't think that just because sinners are punished that God is somehow an ogre. This is not the case. Now, the just shall see and fear. The just shall see it, and they shall be in awe, shall we say, and they shall laugh. They'll be pleased and say, so this is the man who refused to take God as his stronghold, but trusted in the greatness of his wealth and grew powerful by his crimes. Now, here we see another aspect to the sinfulness of sin. It's the man who trusts in himself, the man who relies on his own greatness and refuses to rely on God. But I, says the psalmist, the virtuous man, am like a growing olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the goodness of God forever and ever. He's like that olive tree. It's got roots. It's in the house of God. It draws its strength from God himself. So he finishes off by saying, I will proclaim that your name is good in the presence of your friends. And one of the signs of the goodness of God is the way sinners come to a bad end. Well, I think this psalm tells us a great deal about the discourse the church should have with regard to eternal punishment. Hello, I hope that cheers you up. All the best. Bye.